Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to add to the debate on Bill 83, the anti-SLAPP bill. And I think we'll start off by, it will be quite interesting and ironic if the first ever use of this legislation would be from the Leader of the Opposition, my colleague from Nepean Carleton, in their upcoming suit and statement of claim by the Premier of the province. It would be quite ironic if they get the opportunity to exercise this in the coming times. But Speaker, I also want to recognize it's good to see the Attorney General in the House listening to the debate today. I think this is an important piece of legislation. I think it is important for the Attorney General to hear the different comments from around the House and the different perspectives. I want to begin by saying this anti-SLAPP legislation, I believe, is a necessary function out of the dysfunction of our present system. Right? We often see in this House legislation that comes forward that really, in essence, puts a bandage on a problem. And we do have problems in our legal systems. It's getting difficult to even call it a justice system these days. Even the Supreme Court, Chief of the Supreme Court, Beverly McLaughlin, has on many occasions written and spoken about the dysfunction of our legal system. And I view this Bill 83 as one of those bandages that doesn't really look at the root problems that are happening in our legal system, but some way to try to minimize or mitigate the faults and the failings that we see in our legal system. And there's a host of them, but I think we can all recognize some very problematic functions of the system. The high cost for people to seek remedies or to defend against actions, the necessity to, and the inability for people to defend themselves, always requiring others to advocate on their behalf. And this legislation, Bill 83, is one of those bandages to try to minimize the dysfunction. Another one is the prompt payment legislation that's in the House right now as well. The prompt payment, if we had a good, solid, functioning legal system, we would not need to have that prompt payment legislation as well. But contractors are finding difficulty in seeking remedy and finding remedy in the courts. Mr. Speaker, I have a direct and personal story on this anti-SLAPP legislation, which I think it's important, and I'd like to share.
Your guy speaking.
I'd like to share with the House and with the Attorney General. Back in 2004, before I became elected, a resident of a township in Lanark County, his name is Dr. Don Page, and people from the third party would maybe recognize his name. He was a long-time member of the NDP party, and he ran unsuccessfully for the NDP party. And he lived in Montague Township, and across the road from him there was a tragic fire with fatalities in that fire. Don Page lived next door and immediately went to the assistance, did manage to help save the family dog, but there was fatalities in that fire. Don spoke out and critical of local government about their response and the fire department's response to that fire. And in due course, in a very short course, the township of Montague laid a defamation suit against Don Page. And really, Speaker, and for the Attorney General, that was a case where the local government of the day felt uncomfortable with the criticisms of one of their residents and thought a $50,000 defamation suit would suffice to shut Don Page up. That was in 2004. The case was finally settled in 2006. At the time, I headed up a local organization called the Lanark Landowners Association. We raised a substantial amount of money to assist Don and his wife in their defense. But they're pensioners and of modest means, and there was no way that they could afford to adequately defend themselves. And the system is so broken that for a lay person to defend themselves is really impractical and not effective. We did raise some money, enough to hire a lawyer for Don, and the judge eventually, actually, by the time when it did get to court, the first hearing in court, the judge threw the case out. And it was interesting what the judge said in his decision. He said, in a free and democratic system, every citizen must be guaranteed the right to freedom of expression about issues relating to a government as an absolute privilege, without threat of a civil action or defamation being initiated against them by that government. That was Justice Kenneth Pedlar of the Ontario Superior Court in his decision about Dr. Don Page. He did go on to say that individually, those members of council who felt that there was a defamation could do so as individuals, but not as part of the government of Montague Council or Montague Township. It was also interesting, and I think this is something that we have to recognize, you know, sometimes remedies are not immediate, and sometimes they may not be apparent. But what was interesting, that was the decision in 2006. Shortly thereafter, there was a municipal election in Montague, and 4 of the 5 elected positions in that council were not elected in the next round of elections. 4 of the 5 were replaced by other people. So there was another remedy that was not so quick, was not so apparent, but people saw that there was an abuse by that government, by that local government, against one of their own residents, and they took action. They couldn't take action in the courts, but they could take action in that court of public opinion and express themselves. I would like the Attorney General to think about some of the other problems within the legal system that we could fix or streamline and make more effective, so that further pieces of legislation such as Bill 83 and such as the Prompt Payment Act would not have to come before the House, that we could actually have a legal system that we could refer to as a justice system that provides remedies, provides protection and defense by individuals against those people with deeper pockets. That's, you know, how thick your wallet is and how deep your pockets are ought not to be the measurement of legal success in this province. Okay? That's really, and I think we can make significant strides in this legislature, bringing forth reforms and amendments to our legal system that actually attack the root of the problems and not just apply more layers of bandages and allow that root, that open gash, that problem to persist and to continue. And I do hope that, I know Don Page was not the only person who's been affected in that manner. There's been many, many people. And it is a duty and an obligation of us to assist our residents and people, common everyday people, that they can find protection and find remedy in the courts. Thank you.
Questions and comments?